And so now what I'd like to do is begin by introducing you the topic that we're going to talk about, Emerging Entrepreneur Panel. Essentially, we're going to talk about lessons learned, discuss challenges, opportunities that these panelists have experienced, and then, as all good entrepreneurs, share some success through failure, because failure is an important part of the process. Our moderator today is Jaret Davis. He is co-managing director of Greenberg Traurig. He is a corporate attorney, and he is also part of the emerging technologies practice at Greenberg Traurig. So please join me in welcoming our panel. So a big round of applause. And I turn it over to Jaret Davis.
Thanks so much. First is a mic check. Can everyone hear us? Because of course you would indicate if you couldn't. But. Well, we want to welcome everyone. First off, given our firm is one of the founding partners here, I want to thank everyone. This has been extremely gratifying to see the response we've had to eMerge. And I think in some ways, obviously I'm biased, this panel is one of the most important because this is what it's all about, building that entrepreneurial ecosystem for the youth to tap into their talent and their innovation. And here we have three guys who are experts at that, who have each had successful experience with entrepreneurship, and they're going to share their experiences with it. So starting from right, we have Dr. Abhinav Gautam, who is co-founder and chief medical officer of Nexus Clinical. We have Weinraub, who I understand your family's here.
Yes, they are.
Who is CEO and co-founder of Live Ninja. And we have Jaret Kleinert, who's co-founder of 2 Billion Under 20. So gentlemen, you've all done the pitch, you've all done your little elevator pitch with VCs, et cetera. I'm going to ask each of you to succinctly describe your business model and also describe, generally speaking, your path in entrepreneurship.
I think my path was a little atypical. So I moved to Miami to do my residency in anesthesiology here at and then after my first year, saw a distinct opportunity with healthcare and informatics and technology, so started Nexus Clinical. And I kind of did both of them concurrently while finishing my studies and graduated and walked away from medicine for the most part, and now I'm pursuing the business full time.
And tell us a little bit about Nexus Clinical.
So Nexus Clinical is a sort of cutting-edge cloud-based electronic health record, patient health record platform that's been designed by physicians and engineers. And the whole strategy is to, instead of trying to do everything ourselves, we're just focusing on this clinical piece and partnering with industry leaders in the States to basically disseminate our technology.
Yeah, so Live Ninja is a video chat marketplace where you can buy and sell video chat sessions on any topics. So you could talk with doctors, lawyers, therapists, fitness instructors. And on the flip side, we allow you to sell whatever talent, skill, knowledge, or passion you have via video chat. The reason we started the company is because we wanted to help put a dent in unemployment. Unemployment's this big socioeconomic problem all over the world, yet we keep electing government officials that are from other generations that have no idea how this generation works. We're not a generation of 9-to-5ers anymore. We're not a generation of construction workers or people that sit in cubicles. We're a generation of entrepreneurs, businesses of one, freelancers, contractors, consultants. So we thought, let's kind of take the problem of unemployment and attack it in a modern way. And basically what our site does is you tell us what you're good at, the rate you like to charge, and we help you get clients all over the world via video chat. So whether that's something technical like medical or legal advice, or helping someone with their business plan, or maybe you're just fashion savvy, you can give someone fashion advice, or you're good at calculus, can help someone with their math homework. We just help you monetize whatever skill, talent, or passion you have. The latest thing that we've done is we rolled out a new product called Katana, which takes our video chat technology and puts it on any website to help drive sales and customer service. So you could put it on, if you're an insurance agent, you could put it on your website. So when somebody goes to your site, they can automatically connect with you. No need to say, what's your Skype ID, or download GoToMeeting or something like that. Immediately go to your site and click a button and chat with you. And that can go for individual consultants or big businesses as well.
And finally, Jaret.
So I'm the co-founder of 2 Billion Under 20, which is a forthcoming book. It's also an online community and a much bigger movement that we're planning that brings together some of the world's smartest and most talented millennials at or under 20. So we brought together people like Olympic athletes, teenage entrepreneurs, singers, actors, scientists from over 20 different countries in order to empower the 2 billion people in the world under 20. So that's been a real passion project of mine. The book's coming out in spring of 2015, and we've been growing a really crazy community of the most talented and intelligent young geniuses. Then I also work for a company called 15Five out in San Francisco, which does enterprise SaaS.
So let's go down to the foundational question. Each of you basically is a walking case study for us, so this is going to be invaluable. When you look at any entrepreneur, including the big boys, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, et cetera, all the way down to clients I see every day, the question always strikes me is how do they take that leap of faith? It's very daunting when you think about it. And I'm sure a lot of the young people in the audience who have a great idea will agree. How do you break through that core of stability, that comfort zone of stability, and get right down to the idea and just jump into it, risk and all?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I wanted to start a company as early as 13. So I finally took the leap at 15 and decided that using the internet as a platform to start a business was the easiest or had the lowest barrier to entry at a young age. So jumped into that with my first company, which ultimately failed. I guess that'll be a great failure story for later on in the panel. And then with 2 billion under 20, I was actually at a talk just like this one about how there were 20 people selected for a program called the Teal Fellowship each year. There were 200 people in the audience and 2 billion people in the world under 20, as was pointed out. So I got my idea for 2 billion under 20 from a talk just like this one. So definitely thank you guys for all coming and listening to us, and hopefully we can inspire you in some way.
And what encouraged you? Because you mentioned you had the idea, but what did encourage you to take the leap to execute on it?
So I guess I had this idea that there was 2 billion people in the world under 20, and then after a few months I was getting interested in trying to disrupt the publishing industry and or write a book. So those two ideas merged, realized I had access to a really crazy young entrepreneurial community already from the other businesses I'd started, and just decided to go for it. I consulted one of my peers, and then I just posted it up on Facebook in one of the groups I'm a part of. And within half an hour of making that post, we had 50 likes, 60 comments. 4 people wanted to be my co-founder on the project, which my co-founder right now raised $1 million from Richard Branson when she was 18 and sold her last company at 20. So picked a good partner for that. And just validating the idea really quickly. Like, hey, do you guys like this idea? Anyone want to work on it with me? And immediately people said yes. So that was, I guess, the proof of concept, and very, very lean way of going about things.
Well, how about you? Did you have immediate validation that helped you get over the initial trepidation, or was there something else that helped you make that leap?
Yeah, it was my wife. That's my validation.
Fair enough.
Basically, I think, well, in my case, I was in the corporate world before I started Live Ninja. I had 2 previous internet ventures when I was 13 and also when I was 16. So I was had that entrepreneur bug early on. But just taking that jump, obviously, from a steady paycheck and quitting, I think is always a big step for people. There's this great acronym JFDI, which is just F and do it. I think that's something that I like to kind of my motto as I build my business. I don't think there's a right or wrong time. I think you have to be somewhat obsessed with your company or with your idea or your mission. I think being mission driven is incredibly important. I think if you look at most of the successful entrepreneurs around the world, they didn't get rich just to be rich. They're rich as a byproduct of their mission, and that just kind of happened. So you have to be mission driven. If you're obsessed with that idea, and if something you can't get out of your head, you might as well just take that leap. You got to also think of what are you doing right now, and if you are maybe in the corporate world, or you're doing something where these jobs and these positions will always be there. You can always try and make what you want to happen a reality in the world, and then come back to the corporate world or a steady paycheck. You can always think like that. It's not an all or nothing, but definitely you will probably be most regretful if you don't try something you're obsessed about. So if you're obsessed and you can't stop thinking about it, there's no better time to start a company than today.
Abhinav?
I think as cliche as it sounds, it really fundamentally starts with introspectively, being honest with yourself. And if you're in whatever vocation, right, even if you're really good at it, if you're waking up each morning and you're not 100% excited, not that you will be every morning, but this subtle vibrations that you have where, and we've all experienced it, when you're in a positive place versus a negative, right? And I think Steve Jobs said something along the lines one day of, if you're doing something and you wake up every day for a couple weeks and you're really not happy, it's probably a sign that you should try something else. Obviously, taking the plunge is very scary, and it can be complicated by people's financial situations, social situations, what have you. So oftentimes, I think you really have to. Again, like Elon Musk, right? It's entrepreneurship, he says, is like eating glass and staring, through the abyss, right? There's a lot of stuff that you do that's just awful, terrible. You hate it. You would never do it, but you just power through because you've put yourself in a scenario where there is no other alternative, right? It's either success or death, kind of, so to speak. So yeah, I mean.
Just to piggyback on that, I mean, he mentioned the Steve Jobs Stanford commencement speech. If anybody hasn't watched that, you should definitely watch that. And I think the quote was, if you wake up every single morning and you look at yourself in the mirror, you ask yourself, if today was the last day that I spent alive on this planet, would I be happy doing what I'm about to do today? And if the answer is no more than a few times, to stop yourself and rethink everything, because our time is finite. You know, we only have so many hours and so many days to spend on this planet. Do what you love and have no regrets.
And you know, kind of furthermore, I think, again, taking this plunge, a lot of the trepidation is usually, I think, financially related or related to perceived stability, right? And fundamentally, again, if you know, there's a shift now in society where, you know, being an entrepreneur is something that's now being celebrated, right? Where once, you know, before maybe it wasn't so much. And, you know, I think the misconception, especially amongst young people, is you read all these great sensational news stories of, you know, like the Instagram kid in 13 months flipping out a company for $1 billion, right? That just doesn't happen. So it's not like something you do for the easy way. It's actually much harder than, you know, even medicine was, right? But it's all about doing what you love and realizing, what do you really need in life, right? I mean, you really fundamentally just need food, shelter, and a couple other things, right? I mean, it's not so giving up or walking away from something temporarily to really go after your dream. If you really assess your risk, I mean, more often than not, it's I think you perceive it to be larger than it actually is.
It's a lot riskier staying where you are, actually.
Yeah. Well, there's this Voltaire quote that says something. Uncertainty isn't pleasant, but but certitude is insanity, basically, right? So.
Well, it's interesting. You're all touching on aspects of something Will said, which I thought was fascinating, which is you have to be about the mission. If you're not mission driven, if you're driven by anything other than the mission, other than the vision, it's not going to work. Now, let's take that to the next level, though. Is vision itself, by itself, enough? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people with some great ideas, but without execution ability, it doesn't quite work out. So what have you guys observed in terms of how do you bridge that gap between the visionary and somebody who actually takes the vision and gives it some tangibility to it?
Well, I mean, I think you look statistically, even for entrepreneurs like all of us, I think if you look at the stats, it's usually after 3 years, the founder has moved on and there's someone else who's actually in the company and who's operationalized it. And very few founders actually stay on, for a long period of time, because most often it's different skill sets that are required. So having a vision is obviously very, very important, but for an entrepreneur in the early stages, work ethic, I think, is equally as important, if not maybe more.
Yeah, no, I think any entrepreneur or any investor that's in the tech space will say ideas are a dime a dozen. If you are an entrepreneur and you're protecting yourself by NDAs, I mean, forget about it. They're meaningless, and execution is everything. That's why I kind of go back again to being mission-driven is so important, because I think that separates the people with, I have a great idea, for a photo sharing app, or then, you could pitch a photo sharing app and be like, okay, I share photos with people, and then you could pitch a photo sharing app and be like, I'm just extremely passionate about connecting to each other in, the most important moments of life and making that as seamless as possible so my friends and family will always stay in sync with me. The person that's mission-driven as opposed to wants to create a cool app is always going to win every single time. That's why I think you see so many investors betting on mission-driven founders, because those are the people that, are going to break through the nights of cold sweat and plow through and will something into existence. So I think, again, you can have an idea, but you obviously have to execute it, but make sure that whatever idea it is, that you're extremely passionate about it, that literally you can't sleep unless this exists in the world. Don't waste your time on any ideas just because they're like a novelty idea. Very few times does that ever work out.
Well, it's interesting. Well, it sounds like one of the concepts is recognize your limitations. If you're a visionary that doesn't have execution ability, you will have to onboard some people that can help you execute.
Absolutely.
But then my question, because maybe it should be for myself, because what I do in my day job is help entrepreneurs sort of protect their ideas so they can at least retain some aspect of it. What are your ideas on? So let's say you bring in that CEO or that CFO or somebody who has execution ability. How do you still keep your idea? Or maybe you don't. Maybe your answer is you realize when your lifespan's done, flip it and move on to the next venture. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on, you've brought in that team to execute. How do you still make sure your vision keeps it. It's almost analogous to the creative world, say in movies or film. You bring in a new producer, and next thing you know, your movie, which was X, becomes dramatically different. How do you keep your vision? How do you maintain the integrity?
Well, I think that you hire the right people. I think that there are a lot of people out there that you could potentially bring into your team, but you don't bring in team just because they're talented or because they think what you're doing is cool. You want to bring in a team that's aligned with your mission, and I think if you are a mission-driven founder, you will, and if you speak mission first, if you talk about the why you started the company, not what the company is, you'll attract people that are on the same mission. I'm very fortunate to have a team that believes in what we're doing, not they believe why we're doing it, as opposed to really, what the product is, what it is. We could say we're a video chat app, but again, we really started the company to help put a dent in unemployment. We feel like that's something that needs to be kind of modernized. And I think when you start mission first, you attract mission-driven people, and you just got to keep that culture in your company, or else it's going to be just split focuses across the board, and that's what you want to try to avoid.
Sure.
So regardless if that's technical or on the business sense or on the design, make sure that you're aligned with that mission. Like, what is the goal at the end of the day to do what in the world? And if everything's aligned, I think that's going to work out.
It's almost evangelical of sorts. I mean, you're basically trying to engage the players who can share your vision and come on board. And it seems like a critical factor of success becomes engagement, whether it be engagement of the potential funding sources, potential customers for your product, et cetera. Jaret, your entire model is about engagement. I mean, that is the core of 2 billion under 20. Talk to me about, at least from the youth context, and feel free to take it more global, what's the key to effective engagement?
Well, I guess, Will said it, it's having this mission, and if your vision and your mission is big enough, you're going to need other people to help you accomplish that. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't change the world by himself. He obviously had a team. With 2 billion under 20, my original vision, which has now become a group vision, was to get 2 billion people in the world engaged in what they're doing and following their passions in life. So we can all work together to actually and truly change the world. So I need 2 billion people to engage with me. And while me and my co-founder might be heading up the project, we've been able to reach out and, as far as contributors in the book and first community members, find the people that shared our vision, really got the fact that this was more than just an individual, and it was all about really having really sound communication between different elements. So I don't think there's been many times before where you have 2 different Olympic athletes, one a gymnast and one a ping pong player, interacting with a scientist who developed a nuclear fusion reactor in his garage at 17, the 2 of them interacting with successful entrepreneurs, the 3 of them interacting with a So You Think You Can Dance finalist. And that was all stemmed from a shared vision that everyone has bought into, and really sound community. And it is all about community, whether it's your tribe that you're starting your company with, your 100 employees or your first 50 employees, the tribe of your customers and the people you're going after to try and serve. It's all about service. It's all about engaging the right people initially, and then using that collective power to push your vision to a global scale.
Now, so far, everything we've talked about is almost sort of ethereal. It's almost spiritual, if you will. Let's get down to brass tacks, what these folks are really concerned about. What's it like being a startup company in Miami at present? I mean, each of you are in this particular local ecosystem. Well, it seems like I remember 5-10 years ago, I would see a startup maybe once a month or so. Now I feel like almost on a daily basis, I'm getting calls from startups to mentor them, to represent them, et cetera. What's it like out there now? What's the terrain like?
I mean, I think they'll have a better aspect on it because I've worked for 2 companies in San Francisco, and my platform is more of like a global thing. I mean, the workplace nowadays has partly become something that's online, as Will could easily attest to. But as a young entrepreneur in South Florida, it's gotten much better. 4 years ago when I was starting, there was almost no one in Boca where I live, or Miami or West Palm that could really help in what I was doing. But it's been getting a lot better. I mean, I'm glad to see that they're throwing launch-sized festivals or South by Southwest-sized festivals here, like eMerge. The co-working spaces are getting a lot better. So really enjoying seeing the growth over the last 3 years.
Any perspective you guys have?
Yeah, well, I think it's an incredibly exciting time for Miami as a tech ecosystem. I think it's an incredibly exciting time to start a company and be a startup anywhere, particularly in Miami, though, because we have had challenges launching early stage software and technology companies. But I mean, it's incredible the shift and the transformation and the momentum that this city has had in the last, I would say, 2 years. in the tech space. I mean, this probably is one of the most supportive and welcoming startup communities, I think, in the world right now, because you have a lot of very passionate people that want to see a startup ecosystem exist here, and it's something that didn't, and you had this kind of like convergence that's happened just very, very recently. So because of that, everybody's kind of like in a one-for-all mentality, or I'm sorry, all-for-one mentality. It's really, really nice to see that kind of support system, because it really helps entrepreneurs, and you really need everything to be rounded out. You need, people that are giving donations, you need investors, you need entrepreneurs, you need people that are willing to take long-term views on building software companies. A lot of people now also, they are, people that have, Miami is a place that has a lot of real estate capital and obviously financial services, people that make their money in financial services and not necessarily in tech. And tech is obviously a very new thing. But you see support of people that obviously want to put their money behind entrepreneurs, and you see that across the world, but particularly here in Miami, it's very exciting, because we would never have the ecosystem for a startup to go out and get a $500,000 seed round, or even a $1 million plus round. And there are players here looking actively for making those kind of investments, and that didn't exist just a few years ago. So I think it's incredibly exciting. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of money coming in, obviously, from Latin America and Europe into Miami. Miami is emerging as one of the most, beautiful and most popular places to live and to visit. It's a very transformational city. There's not, just momentum behind the tech scene. There's so much momentum behind Miami in general. I mean, what's happening in Brickell, and you see all over, all the development and how the city transforms on a daily basis. It's a city of opportunity right now for sure, and the tech space is, I think, benefiting from that and all that change. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think Will covered it. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, it's obviously very exciting. I mean, it's very, very exciting times. I think we're at you're having a confluence of capital, now really starting to flow in, due to technology barriers, of entry into starting a company. It's never been easier before, right? Or cheaper, exactly. Right. So you have, a lot of factors, really, the university ecosystems here really starting to push it heavy, right? So the talent pool, the quality is increasing, and the interest level, I think, just, in general is peaking, right? Or hopefully not peaking, but it's obviously on a marked upward trajectory. So it's fantastic.
Is it possible, though, for a young entrepreneur to almost feel overwhelmed? Because now, is there ever a potential that we've swung the pendulum the other way, where right now you've got everything from Incubate Miami to Venture Hive to New World Angels to Medina Capital to, you have all these different service folks who are now providing, as you say, an all-for-one mentality of jumping in and developing this ecosystem. I guess my only concern, I think this is the concern of a lot of young entrepreneurs, is how do you navigate all that? How do you navigate that ecosystem? Once we get the ecosystem well-defined, I agree, it may not be quite mature yet. Mm-hmm. How do you just plunge someone into it? How do they navigate it?
I think mentorship really is one of the most important things in life, in general, no matter if you're a lawyer or doctor or whatever you're doing, right? It's connecting with someone who has achieved or gotten or has knowledge that can help you, right? And reducing the slope of your learning curve, right? To me, that's what mentorship's all about. So it's just like, for all young people, I mean, information is so readily available. Now it's really, how do you parse through it, right? So even like what you're talking about, how does a young entrepreneur parse through, well, who are the good VCs, who are the good angels, right? Who's gonna, take me for a ride, right? Like, am I wasting my time here or there? Fundamentally, it goes back to what Will was saying, like, you have to start with a concept or something, a mission, so to call it, that you're passionate about. And then I think the next step is you find a mentor. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a venture capitalist. It can just be anyone, yourself, right? Give you a call and say, hey, look, this is kind of my situation. How do, where do I, what are the next steps, right? And I think that's, kind of step one, step two.
I would give some very simple, methodical advice. First step, find an awesome lawyer. Step one.
And
immediately. So really, I think that would, if you're an entrepreneur, you're venturing out, Miami, of course, but like just in any city, right? If you start an idea, first find yourself a great lawyer, then you can navigate the term sheets, you can navigate through the advice, you can navigate through that kind of stuff. Have someone that's on your side and kind of unbiased. I think that's number one. I think you need an outstanding lawyer in your corner, because there's going to be a lot of stuff thrown at you that you really don't understand, and you need someone to help you digest it. I think that problem that you're explaining, obviously we got a lot of saturation. There's a lot of but it's good saturation.
Yep,
It's like,
exactly.
it's a good problem to have right now. Like I'd rather have that extreme than the opposite extreme, because there's just, one thing that all of those organizations that you mentioned have in common is excitement for Miami, and they want to see Miami companies grow, because if, a rising tide, lifts all ships. And they want to see successful companies here, and if it doesn't happen through them, they want to see it happen through somebody else, because then Miami as an ecosystem as a whole is going to benefit. That's why I really believe this is such a supportive, exciting ecosystem, because we're right there in the beginning stages. We're not a Silicon Valley, we're not a New York, we're not even a Boulder or an Austin, which is way further along on a tech ecosystem than we are. We're right there at the beginning, and we kind of have, again, this all for one mentality, which is so great to have, especially for early stage entrepreneurs and investors alike.
So I think Will's like the LeBron James of this panel, and we're like the Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. But
I'll take it.
As a young entrepreneur, mentors have been my biggest asset. And I've surrounded myself with what I call like a personal advisory board. So I think of myself as a company where I've gone out and acquired or tried to find mentors in various different skill sets. So I have a mentor that has legal background. I have a mentor who I work for that I'm watching him grow a company, and I'm learning how to be a super connector. And then I have various mentors as far as starting huge blogs and doing public speaking. And I've been able to go out and the younger the better. So you guys better get started like right now if you haven't already. But that's one of the beautiful things about a community like this, especially when we're at an early stage in the community, is getting those mentors are easier than trying to go to Silicon Valley and get some of the big VCs to be your mentors, or trying to get the top-notch entrepreneurs to be your mentors when they have other time allotments or just more people vying for them. So definitely a big thing is mentorship.
I'm going to shift to become a panelist for about 60 seconds. Obviously, we talked about this panel, but in no way, shape, or form was the law firm plug scripted. So I just want to go on the record saying that.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate it. And actually, all seriousness, this is one of the things I do it every day as mentor. So I absolutely agree with that. To show it wasn't scripted, though, I want to give a plug for another organization. How many people in the audience here are familiar with Endeavor? Show of hands, show of hands. There we go, good. If you're not, this is an organization you want to get to know. Knight Foundation brought them here with a seed grant of about $2 million. They are a professional mentoring organization. Their entire raison d'etre is exactly what they said. They basically bring you, they're the connector to the whole community. They're the ones, they onboard startup companies of a certain amount, certain revenue profile, et cetera, and then they tell them, well, what do you need? You need a law firm, you need VC, sources of VC funding, you need this, you need that, you need strategic guidance, and they pair you up with an Endeavor mentor. So I would highly recommend, they're here at eMerge, I would highly recommend you get to know them, because they fill that hole that I was referring to, and I absolutely 100%, it's sort of a rigged question. It actually wasn't even on the preliminary thoughts.
And one thing that's exciting about Endeavor, I mean, this is a world-renowned organization.
Absolutely.
And, first U.S. office
Is in Miami.
They chose Miami.
Yep.
So that shows you like what momentum we have right now.
That's right.
Yep.
All right, so let's go even more meat and potatoes. Let's talk funding, the white elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. How do you do it? How did you guys do it? How did you get your angel rounds, any VC rounds you've enjoyed? How are you eating?
You want to?
Yeah, my answer is going to be short. We're privately funded, didn't need any money, and we're not really looking for any. So it's a good.
That's a good one.
It's a
good problem to have.
It's a good place to be.
Yes.
So I've got a skewed perspective on that.
Yeah, I need to get on that level. So no, we've raised 2 rounds here in Miami. Most of the money came from Miami. I think when we started and I embarked on raising that first round of funding, I think it was April 2012, and it was it's changed so much just in a couple of years. The scene here looks so different. There were just a few players, a few investors doing early stage investments in companies, especially tech companies. Was lucky enough to find a few, and I think the way you start is very pragmatic, very methodical. You go to networking events. You go where the people that are aligned with your interests and the people that are aligned with your sector hang out. I think when I started the company, there wasn't the Lab Miami, there wasn't Venture Hive, there wasn't any of that. There was Incubate Miami was the one that was available, and I was hanging out at Incubate Miami a couple times. That's where I met our first investor, Marco Ghiberti. He was giving a talk at Incubate Miami, and that led to the first investment and capital injection into the company. So again, it's kind of The great thing, again, about tech ecosystems, Silicon Valley, New York, is you have this level of serendipity, these coincidental convergences that happen on a daily basis. You go to a coffee shop and meet your next developer, or you meet your next investor, or this person says, oh, I know an advisor that just had an exit in that space and they can really help you out. There's a lot of people that have this, and help out in very serendipitous, unplanned fashion. And I think we're just starting to see that now happen in Miami. I think you start to see this joint effort around Wynwood in particular being like a great ecosystem and a great environment for startups to converge. I think that you just have to hang out where the players are in any stage and in any part of your business. And you should make it a point to know where those players are. If it's at an accelerator, if they're giving a talk in Fort Lauderdale or Boca, which plenty of them are, people that have experience in your space, that's where you need to start. And then once you get one, then introductions lead to another, and it happens very, very naturally from there. But I think with fundraising, just a few tips, that's a full-time job. So if you are, if you have a company, you want to make sure that you have a couple co-founders or people that can continue building the company while you're raising the money. Because really you can't focus on anything else, because it takes that much effort and that much energy to raise a full round of funding for something that never existed before, right? So, and it's fascinating that I found out people really don't like parting with their money, right? So you have to be very respectful of that, and you have to be very mindful. You have to do your homework. You'd be very methodical about the process. Like I'm saying, if you're raising money, have a CRM of every investor that you contact, be organized, have a spreadsheet, contact one, first contact, second point of contact, cross them off your list, make sure that you're doing the homework. If investors are doing their due diligence on you, which they are, make sure you do twice as much due diligence on them. You mean you're taking their money, they're becoming a partner with you on this journey. Make sure you like the partners involved. There's a lot of things to consider, but as far as finding the capital, you just start very simply. This is a great place to start. There are people in this room, I'm sure, that can help each other out. There are people in the conference and other networks. I mean, the Lab Miami, if you guys aren't familiar with the Lab, great place to go just to be if you're interested in tech in Miami, and great things happen very serendipitously there. And just put yourself in a position to meet people, and you will.
Manny Medina has a great story, the founder and chairman of eMerge. When he was the founder of Terramark and he was doing fundraising for it, he joked that he and his CFO got to the point where they just carried a laptop around. Even if they got into a cab at the airport, they'd break it open and just start doing the entire presentation from the cab.
That's it.
But you're right, it's engagement, it's persistence, because you never know where that next lead's going to be.
And one more thing I can add on, tell everybody about your idea.
Yeah.
Everyone. NDAs are bullshit. Forgive my language, I'm sorry. They are in the entrepreneur space, right? Can I get a round of applause? NDAs are bullshit. Really, they are. Any investor.
I can't clap on that.
Okay, no. For me, any investor, I mean, I've pitched my company 1,000 times, and there are investors that say, hey, look, for me, I get pitched so many times, I can't sign an NDA because so many people pitch me the same idea, because ideas are a dime a dozen. I think they do have a time and a place, but when you're getting that first.
You have to be strategic about how they're used.
Agreed.
That's the case.
So again, this is where a good lawyer comes into play, right? But you really have to be open about your idea, because really ideas are a dime a dozen. You never know. You're sitting there having coffee with somebody and they say, look, I can't help you, but I know someone that can. Or you know what, that's a great idea. It's just not my thing. I don't invest in those type of things, but I know a bunch of people that do. I'll send them a note. A lot of our investments came that way, from just me talking in an open environment or at a coffee shop, and led to an introduction that was hyper-specific, a hyper-targeted introduction that could help the company grow. So again, really, just be so open about your idea. If you talk about it, the more you talk about it, not just from an investment level, the more refined your pitch gets, because you hear somebody absorb that for the first time. It lives so viciously inside your head that when you hear and you look at somebody, digest that for the first time, it's basically like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way. And they ask you questions, but what happens if this, and that? If I'm a user and I want to do this, what happens? Not only does it refine your pitch, and not only does it lead to new introductions that can open doors, but it helps your product in the long run in general.
And just to piggyback off that, you would be surprised how many parts of your business model really aren't confidential. A lot of times people think it's a binary. They think it's all or nothing. It's all confidential. It's all the most sacred idea on the planet or nothing. And you'd be surprised when I counsel clients, I tell them, look, 80% of it you can open the kimono and just disclose. And that gets them hooked enough so that maybe you get an NDA out of it that way. Or like you said, strategically speaking, it's also, there's a huge trust factor. I mean, if you're dealing with a real player, institutional angel investor, a VC, et cetera, who has a lot of trust out there, because to me, and I counsel VCs, the ultimate way to enforce an NDA is to have them realize if it gets out that you breached an NDA, no one else is going to talk to you.
Absolutely. Again, I do think it has a time and a place. I think one thing I can give advice to the entrepreneurs that are raising money, when you raise money, and I think like you think in your head that it looks something like, in the movies, you raise capital and you pop bottles of champagne. It's very anticlimactic, okay? You raise money and your head literally slams on the keyboard. You're like, damn, now I have a fiduciary responsibility to all of these people. Before I was my own boss, now I have to report to other people. So if you're raising money, like, be very mindful that money's not free. You're giving equity to your company, to other people, and you have a responsibility to report to them on a daily basis and get their feedback because they have such a stake in your company. So be very mindful of that. It's very glamorized, and you read TechCrunch and NextWeb and all that lore, and it's really not like that. It's a much more cut and dry kind of process, and it's not, you're not celebrating at the end. You're just like, oh, I can get to work.
Relief.
And, yeah, it's relief. And there's a great quote that says, like, congratulating an entrepreneur for raising money is a lot like congratulating a chef for buying the ingredients. Okay, so you got the ingredients, but now go cook a meal, right?
Yeah.
So like you got the capital to build a company, now go build it. And that's where the real work starts. But once you raise that money, you're on the clock. You're on the clock, you have limited burn rate, you have a limited runway, and a specific burn rate that you have to be mindful of, and you're racing against the clock now because it's the real deal, and you have to report to all these people involved.
And just two more sources real quick. You can bootstrap like Abhinav, or don't be scared of crowdsourcing. I mean, don't be scared to put your idea up and get an entire community of evangelists to not only fund you, but then support you afterwards.
But I will say this though, crowdsourcing, I mean, and you can
It's
tell
tough.
the SEC regulations though, I mean, it's not something that you want to do unless you really understand it. Again, this whole Kickstarter movement, once you raise, I forgot what the number is, over, I don't know, $50,000 or something, you have to, you basically file a tremendous amount of disclosure and for a
Tremendous
private
amount, and you have to use an intermediary that's registered with the SEC.
Right, so
I
it's,
didn't want to get into geek mode on that. My world,
anyway.
but
It's an option. It's not the
It's
easiest.
an option, but-
You need to like do a whole 2-3 month campaign, because that was my last company. It was a crowdfunding platform. So I could geek out with you, after the panel, but that is another option, and that piggybacks off not doing NDAs and sharing your idea to get more people
I think
interested.
we'll do this for 2 seconds, but I think as the intermediaries develop, now that the rules have been promulgated, I think you're going to see there'll be tremendous mentors and tremendous avenue, because they're going to do all the work. They don't have a choice. It's registered with the SEC. Then you'll be able to go to them, and they'll be able to get you the
It's a growing
liquidity. Exactly.
I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. Again, like there's so much advice out there. Like everybody's kind of giving advice on startups these days. Be careful what you read or who you listen to, because there's no right or wrong way to start a company. You can do it a bunch of different ways. You can raise funding, you can bootstrap, you can crowdsource. Also be very honest with yourself. When you're raising money, think how much money do you really need to start this company? Can you bootstrap it? If you can bootstrap it. Don't raise money. But if you need that early capital to get going, you need a long runway, you know that the business is not going to be profitable from day one, you need obviously that trajectory, go ahead and raise the capital. Know exactly how much capital you need. I talked with an entrepreneur that was looking for advice on raising funding, and I said, how much are you raising? He said, $2 million. I said, okay, cool, how did you get to that number? He goes, I don't know, it sounded like a good number. Like, no, you do not do that.
My dog Fred.
He's going to give away a lot if his baby for $2 million.
Not just that, but I mean, really, it's absolutely ridiculous to do that to yourself. Even if all you need is $50,000 or $100,000 to seed the business and get it to profitability, be honest with yourself. You don't necessarily, not everything is Facebook or Instagram. Sometimes you could build a nice business that sells for 20, 30, 40, $50 million, and you don't need that much capital to get it going, and you can make it profitable. You don't have to be 50 billion or nothing or something like that.
And the problem you see with the $2 million, then you go in, the VC says, okay, your company's worth $2 million.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So again, and then you have to make sure that you're aligned very, very carefully with that investor, because they have to be on the exact same page with you. If it's going to take 3 years for your company to hit its critical mass point, then make sure that they're aligned for 3 years, and not 6 months later they're putting you in a corner and pressuring you to flip the company.
We have 1.5 minutes, and I know eMerge is being stickler, so lightning round time, 15 seconds or less if you can. What's the darkest experience you had as an entrepreneur, each of you, and then I want to go to questions. Start with Abhinav.
Darkest experience was 15 seconds. I don't know. I mean, just some horrible days. Sleeping 1 or 2 hours, coming back from the hospital. 30-hour shift. Then talking to our team overseas. and going back and, just sometimes eating that glass, as Elon Musk said, was just like, why am I doing this, That's probably, aside from that, it's been pretty good.
I go through dark experiences every day, I think, with this company. I think, when you're an entrepreneur, you have, there's two extremes. You're either having the best day ever or you feel like you're about to die.
It's the roller coaster.
It is the roller coaster.
So true.
Reid Hoffman has a great quote, entrepreneurship is like kind of jumping off the cliff and building the airplane on the way down. It's very, very similar to that. I think for me, my darkest days is because there is so much uncertainty with a startup. Again, you're creating something that didn't exist the day before, so you're having to will that thing into existence. For me, I have a very heavy heart for the people involved in my company, my teammates, my co-founders, my employees, all of our spouses and all of our children that are in that family, all of our users and all of our investors. I carry a very heavy heart and a heavy backpack every single day with every one of those people in mind. So I very much do not want to disappoint them, and that leads to a lot of the cold sweats, but it also leads to a lot of the breakthroughs and the good times as well.
10 seconds.
Yeah, same thing as him. I guess the funny one is when I first started my first company, I never even launched the product. Made every single business mistake you can think of, and my first business mentor ended up spending 3 to 5 years in prison, a la Wolf of Wall Street style. So learned a lot from that, and that's why I'm such a stickler on getting really good mentors.
Thank you all. If there's one thing you take away from this panel, it should be the word connectivity, and that's really what eMerge Americas is about. We'll all be here after the panel, so feel free to come talk to us. These are some phenomenal mentors. It's not just me. Thank you all for your opportunity for this.
Give them a big round of applause.